Good evening. I'm Jan Kowalski with Green Slate I. And tonight I'm joined by Brian Klaus, Director of the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic. And this is a live interactive show on CAN TV Channel 21. We're also streaming online at cantv.org/hotline. Tonight we're going to be discussing issues relating to veterans. And for the next 25 minutes, you're welcome to participate by calling in with questions or comments relating to veterans issues. You can call into the number that appears on the bottom of your screen, which is 312-738-1060. And I am here on behalf of Green Slate. And, bear with me. There you go, Green Slate I Incorporated. It's a non-for-profit entity, and there you see the website, the email, and the phone number. Now, Green Slate focuses on reintegrating ex-convicts into the society. Some of the programs that Green Slate sponsors include Feeding the Families of Inglewood, Kirby Puckett Youth Days, and in addition, they also have a Circuit Court of Cook County Community Service Project. And I'm Jan Kowalski, and for my viewers that don't remember, that's Kowalski. And to help you remember my name, there he is. There's my little koala, and he's on skis. Now, some of you might be inclined to call me Kawasaki, but it's really not Kawasaki. It is Kowalski. And to further help you remember my name, I've got this cute little guy over here. That's my little koala bear, and I am 100% qualified. And I'd like you to introduce you to Brian Klaus. He is the director of the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening. I kind of wish I was a skiing koala now.
Yes, it's a cute little koala. Brian, perhaps you can tell our audience a little bit about the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic and what you do there.
With pleasure. The John Marshall Law School Vets Clinic provides free legal assistance to veterans who have been improperly denied by the Veterans Administration when claiming compensation benefits for illness or injury as a result of their military service.
Perhaps you can tell me, what is a veteran? Does that include active duty personnel? Does that include reservists? How about honorable discharges or dishonorable discharges? Can you tell me what a veteran is?
Well, our definition of a veteran to be eligible for our free legal services is somebody who served in the armed forces. If you have questions about your discharge status, you might need to get it upgraded. That's actually a recent project that we took on. But we're pretty broad in our consideration. If you served and if you have something related to the VA, give us a call.
And what kind of legal services do you provide for veterans in your clinic, Brian?
The core of what we do is VA benefit appeals. In order to qualify for VA benefits, Jan, a veteran has to, of course, served in the armed forces of the United States. And they have to have a qualifying discharge, so basically a general discharge and above. They have to have suffered an illness or injury, and that illness or injury has to be related to their military service. And it doesn't mean it has to have happened in the military to have effects after the military. I cite an example of a friend. She fell off a truck in Iraq, blew out her knee. She was 27 at the time. Her knee's fine now. She spent about a month doing recuperation, went back to Iraq. She's now pushing 40, sometimes gets some knee pain. In another 10 or 15 years, she might need another knee. So that's an example of something related to your military service. Another interesting thing that we recently started doing was doing discharge upgrades. I mentioned in order to qualify for VA benefits, you have to have a qualifying discharge, and some people don't. And that can happen for a variety of reasons.
Well, let me just back you up. What is a qualifying discharge? It sounds like legal terminology. What does that mean?
It's absolutely legal terminology.
What does that mean?
We've all heard of the various kinds of discharges people have. They have an honorable discharge, general under honorable conditions, general discharge. There's a whole bunch of different types of discharge. going down to things like a bad conduct discharge, which is essentially a felony trial under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The type of discharge you have entitles you to certain benefits. If you have an honorable discharge, you're entitled to things like your education benefits. General discharge and up, you are entitled to VA benefits, so that'll be health care and compensation for illness or injury. When it gets trickier is when we're looking at things, for example, post-traumatic stress issues, traumatic brain injuries, things like that that weren't diagnosed in the military. People start acting, let's say, out of character and can get thrown out of the military rather quickly, particularly now where we're constricting as a force. So you can have people with undiagnosed PTSD, undiagnosed traumatic brain injury who have been thrown out of the service rapidly and don't qualify for VA services. And the reality is that those are the people who most need them. So when you think of them, they can come home, they have an illness or injury like PTSD or traumatic brain injury, they don't qualify for services, so they can't go to the VA. Where are they going to end up? They're generally not going to be employable. They're going to burn through friends and family very fast, essentially couch surfing. Very often won't want to be in a shelter because of the nature of their injuries, are ineligible for housing from the VA. They end up on the street and often dead.
What kind of services can the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic provide for these kind of people, our veterans?
For the discharge upgrades, we've started that discharge upgrade project. We can assist with applying to the military and the various appeals processes they have in order to upgrade that discharge. And we can certainly help people who want to do it on their own because some vets want to handle it themselves. We can assist in helping you order that appropriate paperwork from the government in order to begin that process. And then on the VA benefit side, we can also assist when a vet has believed that they've been improperly denied benefits from the VA. That's when they give us a call and the lawyers step in.
Well, how do people get in touch with the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic, Brian?
There's a couple of different ways. You can go to the John Marshall Law School website, jmls.edu, and search through the clinics, and you'll find the Veterans Clinic. You can email us that way. You can also give us a call, 312-427-2737, and you can dial us directly at the clinic at 346, or you can just hit 0, talk to an operator, and they'll send you over to us.
So how do you determine eligibility for your program, Brian?
Generally, we like to have the vets live in Illinois. That's about it. We don't have income requirements. And as I mentioned, we don't have a character of service requirement. We will look at your character of service and see if you may be eligible to apply for an upgrade to it.
Is there a cost to people to participate in the Veterans Clinic at the John Marshall Law School?
No, we're free. We have staff attorneys and we have a number of students who work in our clinic. So your viewers should know that when you call, you're going to talk to a student who is supervised by attorneys, students who are very bright, very hardworking, and know this area of the law, and are diligent and devoted to this cause. I like to say we get the best and brightest students who work in this project, and they're very good and passionate about what they do. So if your viewers call in, don't be alarmed that you're talking to a student. This is how they're learning. And they're learning very well, and they do some just splendid and extraordinary work. As you know, Jan, being an attorney yourself, the students are raring to go most of the time.
We are gung-ho, at least I was back then.
Yeah.
As a reminder, you're watching Green Slate I Incorporated live on CanTV Channel 21 and streaming live at cantv.org/hotline. And today's discussion is veterans issues, and I have Brian Klaus with me today from the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic. And if you want to call and join the discussion, please call the number appearing on your screen, which is 312-738-1060. Now, Brian, as long as I have you here, are there any other hot issues that are going on for veterans today?
Oh, we can't just pick up a paper and not find one. There's some interesting things. One of the things we've recently started to focus on in our program, in addition to assisting veterans upgrade discharges is the status of rural veterans in Illinois specifically. We started a partnership with Southern Illinois University Law School, which for those of you who don't know where it is, get on I-57 and drive.
Is it 3 hours south of Chicago or more
No,
than that?
it's 300 miles south
300.
of Chicago. And
Probably closer to Kentucky, I think, right?
the closest city is Paducah. Yeah.
Paducah.
It's a lovely area, a wonderful school, and we are absolutely thrilled to be working this project with Southern Illinois University Law School. They recently started a veterans project down there. Jan, Southern Illinois has some of the highest enlistment rates in the country,
Wow.
going back for generations. A lot of people in Southern Illinois, in addition to joining the active duty military, join the National Guard and Reserve. So Central and Southern Illinois face some issues that we don't in this urban area. For example, when Guard and Reserve units are activated down there, they can clean out half a police department
Wow.
or half of a fire department. You have physicians at the local community hospitals who are in the service can get called up. It puts a real stress on those communities. But also, when these service members return, whether active duty, Guard, or Reserve, and need services, there's some basic issues. We're in Chicago. If you or I were to lose our license and we had to get over here to do a show, we could hop on the Blue Line and walk a few blocks. We could take a bus. We could take an Uber if you want to put a cab driver out of work. Or we could take a cab. If you are, for example, in Polk County, Illinois, which has one of the highest enlistment rates in the country historically, you're 60 miles away from Marion, which is where the VA is. So if you lose your license because of traumatic brain injury or something else,
PTSD, right.
anything that,
You can't drive to
Right.
the VA facility.
how are you going to get there? You're not. So we have veterans in these rural communities with no access to transportation. We couple that with a shortage of legal aid providers in these rural communities, and we are, in many rural communities in this population, in crisis. They cannot get the assistance they need. Thankfully, they have the VFW and American Legion who are still huge members of rural communities who are helpful, but we have some very basic access to justice issues in rural Illinois, and we're thrilled to be working with SIU on these issues.
All right, Brian, I know you're going to kill me on this one, but I've got my own little shtick about the VFW. Many years ago, my father attempted to join the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, but he was denied admission. Apparently, during his term in the military, he was unable to start a war.
Then he could have gone to the American Legion, which is probably right next door.
Well, that's why I'm concerned about the VFW, because of the absence of wars. Nowadays, we have conflicts. We don't have wars. So I don't know how the VFW is able to sustain its membership. Perhaps that's a subject for another show.
Yeah, that could be next month. But you bring up a good point. There's a couple of interesting organizations now that deal with Iraq and Afghanistan veterans primarily. There's the Iraq and Afghanistan
But
veterans.
those are conflicts, right? Those are not wars.
Next month.
All right, next month.
Yeah, veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan will be able to find plenty of veteran service organizations. But the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America is an interesting organization because they recognize that most vets now are younger, very tech savvy. They're not going to go down to a hall and sit there. They have to come home and get on with their lives. And also Student Veterans of America. If any of your viewers are students contemplating returning to school or have returned to school, find your SVA chapter. They're quite helpful. And
Hold on.
Yeah.
What is an SVA chapter, Brian?
Student Veterans of America.
Student Veterans of
that I
America. There is an
just
SVA
said.
chapter.
Yes.
Is that countywide or citywide? How would I find that?
Nationwide. Just Google SVA
Google.
chapter near me.
All right, fantastic.
Okay. Every university will have one. A lot of graduate programs have one.
Is that through the GI education bill or the SVA?
No.
How does that work?
It's a separate organization designed by students, for students. They've grown by leaps and bounds in the Iraq and Afghanistan area. And they exist to help students transition back to student life from being in the military. If you think about it, Jan, if you were shooting people in Fallujah 2 months ago and you come home to return to school, you might not have a lot in common with that 19-year-old who thinks, his idea of fun is, playing Nintendo and smoking weed on the weekends. And you're not going to have a lot in common.
Reintegration's a problem then.
I don't know if it's a problem, but it's veterans can relate sometimes better to other veterans who have been through the experience.
SVA.
Student Veterans of America, yes. I'm shamelessly plugging them because they're a wonderful organization. They do very well by our students at our school.
I'm trying to find out about the education, the GI educational bill. If my father served during the military, am I eligible for any kind of educational benefits? How does that work?
I'm guessing that the age of your... Well, let's talk about the current...
I forget my father.
Yeah, let's not make this all about you. We joke, but there's a lot of seriousness here. Under the current post 9/11 GI Bill, those who have served, who have the qualifying service, are eligible for essentially 8 semesters of education when they return. And the way it's paid is that the veteran is eligible for the maximum in-state tuition at a public school. So U of I, probably the most expensive public university in the state, you can get up to that credit hour rate at the U of I, and you can go to any school in Illinois. And there's also some interesting changes. President Obama signed, I believe it was an executive order, if not legislative, regardless. Sorry, I resorted to being a lawyer and overly explaining it. That a veteran in a state is eligible for in-state tuition. So you can get your in-state tuition. But if you look at the rate for the U of I, that's a significant amount of money you will get over 8 semesters. So if you are going to a private school, there's also the Yellow Ribbon program, which the VA will match 50% of the unmet funding, and the school will forgive part of the other half. So if the school participates in Yellow Ribbon, the veteran can essentially go to that school for free.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not a bad deal. So, but there's a few other wrinkles to the education for veterans. Depending on the type of service that the veteran had and how long their contract was, they very well might be able to give that education to their child, or a portion of their GI Bill to their child. That's going to depend on how long they were in the service and the contract that they signed. But the vets viewing this who are post 9/11 GI Bill probably know it. If you don't, check on the internet or give us a call. We're happy to discuss it. There's also a National Guard specific education money here in Illinois, and there's a veterans education guarantee for Illinois citizens. If you enlist in Illinois and return to Illinois, I believe it's within 6 months of being released, you're entitled to a free education at an Illinois university. So it can be community college all the way up to U of I or SIU.
Fantastic. Brian, how about healthcare? How does the Veterans Administration healthcare, I guess it's Hines, how does that compare with private healthcare for veterans?
There's Hines and there's Jesse Brown.
Right, Brown, there you go.
And there's North Chicago, and North Chicago is actually very interesting because it's a combined federal health facility, so it deals with people who are active duty, it's right by Great Lakes, and it deals with veterans also, so they're in this. It's a very interesting and innovative thing that they're doing up there. But the VA, like any healthcare system, it has its great things and it has things that it's not so good at. The VA, your viewers know that if you're in the VA system, you're generally getting pretty good care. For example, if we look at things like prosthetics, burn recovery, spinal cord injury, PTSD, the VA is doing tremendous work on PTSD. Any of your viewers who have been through the PTSD programs or are over at Jesse Brown, you know the people over there and you know how good they are. And there's an interesting program going on right now at Rush. It's called the Road Home. And it is a cutting-edge PTSD treatment program here in Chicago that has both inpatient and outpatient. It's an intensive program. It is a highly successful program, Jan. We're very lucky in the Chicago area to have the 3 VA facilities and all the supporting organizations around it.
Well, I'm dying to know, how do they help people that are suffering from PTSD? And you said it's a successful program, but I wouldn't have the slightest idea what goes into that. Perhaps you can tell our viewers a little bit about what's involved.
That would be best discussed by an expert better than me. There are a variety of treatments, and it is changing. We see the change in the psychological literature, the DSM, which is the manual that psychologists and psychiatrists use. We're on version 5. It recently changed from version 4. In version 4, PTSD was listed as an anxiety disorder. Yeah. In version 5, it is listed as what it is. It's a stress reaction. There's some myths around PTSD. Your viewers have seen, a Rambo movie. That's not PTSD. PTSD is a whole body reaction to a stressor, something that put you or somebody around you at risk of death or great bodily harm. When we're looking at how PTSD manifests itself, it can manifest itself in a variety of different ways. It's different things to different people, and therefore treatment has got to be different things to different people. But like anything, now Jan, if you broke your arm, would you wait a couple weeks to go to the emergency room?
Clearly.
Yeah. Well, and you're an attorney, you're probably trying to figure out who to sue in the interim. But like anything else, the sooner you get the treatment, the better your chances of that treatment being successful. So if there's anybody out there who has the issues that are some of the common issues to PTSD, like maybe a flat affect, maybe avoiding anything that can put you in an emotional place, avoidance of family, friends, finding yourself much more alone. Now, I'm painting with a broad brush, right. Jan, but you know that if you came back, you're not the same person that when you left, and that's normal with military service. But if it goes beyond just a transition or an integration issue and gets worse, pick up the phone and call the VA. And I think it's also important to note that PTSD is not limited to veterans. It can be, at our clinic, we're very lucky. We have the first private space in the Midwest designed to be PTSD sensitive. So we're looking at issues like egress, sight lines, perimeter, things that display authority. And it's not just for our clients, Jan. It's for students, staff, faculty, guests. You could have had something happen to you. You could have been robbed, assaulted, had a house fire, car wreck, a whole variety of things that could cause you to have a reaction to certain stressors. So PTSD isn't just for vets.
All right, and Brian Klaus, thank you for being with us tonight. And I was wondering if you could tell our viewers once again how to contact the Veterans Clinic at the John Marshall Law School.
I'd be happy to. You can go to the website, go to your Google machine and type in John Marshall Law School Vets Clinic. That'll lead you to us. You can read about us, see what we do, see some of our success stories with the hundreds of clients that we've assisted. You can also pick up the phone and call the school, 312-427-2737, and it's extension 346, or you can just hit 0 and the operator will send you to one of our intake desks. I will say you might have to leave a message. We do get a fair number of calls, over 1,000 a year. It might take, we might not get back to you until the end of the day, but give us a call.
And thank you for watching and participating in today's show. And I'm Jan Kowalski with Green Slate I Incorporated, and my guest tonight has been Brian Klaus.
Good
Brian
afternoon,
Klaus
Jan.
from the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic. And thank you, Professor Klaus. I didn't do that time. Professor Klaus. Well, you didn't want me to call you Professor. I'm sorry, Brian. Professor Klaus is actually Brian Klaus from the John Marshall Law School. And thank you, Brian, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Jan.
And next week, we're going to be discussing preparing for executive orders. I've had a run of run of people coming into my law offices just concerned about what to do in case there's a broad immigration deportation. So next week, hopefully, we're going to be talking about preparing for executive orders and what you can and cannot do. And/or I've been trying for the longest time to get a professor to come in from the John Marshall Law School to talk about Terry stops, what to do in case you're stopped by the police in light of the Department of Justice report here in Chicago. And tonight, I've been joined by Brian Klaus from the John Marshall Law School Veterans Clinic, and thank you, and good night.